Sometimes, destiny doesn't knock politely, it sits down by mistake and changes a life forever. The restaurant was warm golden, and buzzing with quiet luxury. Candlelight flickered off glass walls, and soft jazz hummed beneath the hum of whispered conversations. At a corner table near the window sat Elias Verdon, the youngest CEO in the city's finance empire. His black suit was perfectly tailored, his silver watch glinting as he scrolled through his phone with detached precision. He was waiting. But not for love, at least, not anymore. It was supposed to be a blind date set up by one of his business partners. She's the daughter of a senator, they'd said. Elegant, educated, perfect for you. Elias didn't believe in perfect. Not since his mother's death years ago had he allowed himself to feel much of anything. The world had taught him that emotions were liabilities. So he waited, not for romance, but out of habit, because even cold hearts sometimes remember what warmth used to feel like. Across the city, Clara Hale was running late. Her coat was frayed, her shoes soaked from the rain. She wasn't supposed to be in this part of town at all, certainly not in a restaurant where a single dessert cost more than her weekly paycheck. But her job interview had gone horribly wrong, her phone battery had died, and she needed shelter from the storm. The maitre d' had glanced at her dripping hair and weary eyes and frowned, but she'd mumbled something about meeting someone. And before anyone could stop her, she spotted an empty table near the window, and walked toward it. She didn't know it was his. The mistaken seat. Elias looked up just as she sat down, clutching a soggy purse and exhaling in exhaustion. "Oh," she gasped when she noticed him. "You're already here." He blinked. "Excuse me. You're, Daniel, right? From the app." Elias tilted his head, trying not to smile. "She thinks I'm her date." The way her eyes darted nervously, the way her trembling hands tried. His head, trying not to smile. "She thinks I'm her date." The way her eyes darted nervously, the way her trembling hands tried to smooth her coat, it was obvious she wasn't used to places like this. He should have corrected her. But something about her, the rawness, the quiet panic, the realness, made him pause. "Right," he said finally, lowering his phone. "Daniel." Her shoulders dropped in relief. "I'm so sorry I'm late. The train was delayed, and then my umbrella broke and—" "It's fine," he interrupted softly.
"You're here now."
And for the first time in years, Elias felt a flicker of something he couldn't name.
Two worlds collide.
The waiter approached, visibly uncertain. Elias gestured for 2 menus and ordered wine. Clara froze. "Oh, I don't drink," she stammered. Elias smiled faintly. "Then water it is." He watched as she scanned the menu, her eyes widening at the prices. She tried to hide it, but her trembling fingers gave her away. "You don't have to order anything expensive," he said quietly. Her eyes shot up. "Oh no, I didn't mean, I just—" "It's okay," he said, his tone gentler than he intended. "You seem nervous." "I'm not nervous," she lied, tucking a strand of damp hair behind her ear. "Just, not used to places like this." "Neither am I," he said. "Not really." That earned a small laugh from her, a sound so soft, so genuine, that it stirred something in him he thought was long dead. The kindness of pretending. For an hour, they talked. Not about work or wealth or titles, but about little things.
Serein.
The smell of coffee. Her favorite childhood book. He didn't tell her who he was. She didn't ask. It was strangely liberating, 2 strangers hiding from the world, pretending to belong in the same story. When she smiled, he noticed the faint scar near her collarbone. When she laughed, he caught the spark behind her fatigue. And when she spoke about losing her parents young and raising her younger brother alone, Elias felt the ache of recognition, the same loneliness that had once defined him. Truth at the doorstep. Eventually, the waiter returned with the bill. Clara's face drained of color when she saw it. I thought," she stuttered, fumbling in her bag. "We were splitting, right?" Elias looked at her gently. "Don't worry about it." "No, please," she said, her voice small. "I didn't mean for you to." He placed his hand over hers, stopping her. "It's fine, Clara." Her breath caught. "How do you know my name?" Elias froze, then smiled faintly. "Lucky guess." He stood and offered his hand. "Let me walk you out." Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets shimmered with leftover silver light. She turned to him, eyes full of something between gratitude and confusion. "You're not who I thought you were, are you?" she whispered. "No," he admitted softly. "But maybe that's a good thing." The forgotten umbrella. He held out his own umbrella as they reached the corner. "You'll need this more than I will," he said. "I can't take it," she protested. "Please. Humor me." She hesitated, then took it. Their fingers brushed, a fleeting touch, but one that left a mark neither could erase. "Thank you," she whispered. "For dinner. And for not laughing at me." "I wasn't laughing," he said. "You reminded me what it means to be human." Then before she could reply, he turned and walked away, his reflection fading into the city lights. Back to reality. Clara stood there long after he disappeared. In her hand, the umbrella felt heavier than it should have, like a promise she didn't understand yet. Later that night, as she placed it by her door, she found a business card tucked inside. Elias Verdun, CEO, Verdun Enterprises. Her heart stopped. The Daniel she'd been talking to wasn't her date. He was him, one of the most powerful men in the city. But why had he pretended? She sat down on her worn sofa, tears of disbelief spilling silently down her cheeks. For the first time in years, someone had. Sometimes the kindest hearts don't announce their help, they heal from the shadows, silently rewriting someone's fate. The night after their accidental dinner, Elias Verdun couldn't sleep. His penthouse, sleek and silent, felt colder than usual. He stood by the glass window overlooking the city lights, but all he could see was her face, Clara, drenched in rain yet still smiling like hope itself refused to die. She'd sat down by mistake. She hadn't asked for anything. But somehow, she had left behind a piece of light in the darkest corner of his heart. Elias had built empires, crushed competitors, and signed contracts worth millions. But now, he couldn't sign the one thing that mattered most, a reason to feel again. So he did something uncharacteristic for the man the media called the cold CEO. He opened his laptop and began searching. The truth behind her smile. It didn't take long for him to find her name again, Clara Hale. Age 26. Works at a small neighborhood bakery. Lives in an aging apartment complex near the outskirts of town. The deeper he looked, the more his heart sank. Her file showed unpaid rent notices. A part-time paycheck barely covering groceries. And a younger brother, Ethan Hale, age 8, enrolled in a public school not far away. A memory flashed before Elias's eyes, a boy holding his mother's hand outside a hospital room. Himself, years ago. Helpless, watching the world take everything he loved. He shut the laptop and whispered to no one, "You deserve better, Clara." The silent help begins. The next morning, the bakery where Clara worked was unusually busy. The owner, Mrs. Mendez, came running to her. "Clara, dear. You won't believe it. Someone placed a huge catering order, over 50 boxes for a corporate event." Clara blinked in shock. 50? From us? Yes. And they requested your name on the order form. Said they liked your touch. She froze. Who was it? Mrs. Mendez frowned. Didn't say. Just a company called Verdun Enterprises. Clara didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The cold CEO, the man she'd embarrassed herself in front of, was helping her? No, she thought, shaking her head. It must be a coincidence. But coincidences rarely feel that kind. A CEO with a secret. At his office downtown, Elias signed another document, pretending nothing unusual had happened. His assistant, Lena, raised an eyebrow. "Sir, you just ordered 500 cupcakes for the company's Employee Appreciation Day? Since when do you care about cupcakes?" He smirked faintly. "Since today." Lena tilted her head but said nothing. She'd worked for him long enough to recognize when his silence meant something deeper than business. Every few days, Elias found quiet ways to help. An anonymous donation to Clara's landlord covered 2 months of overdue rent. A raffle prize from the Verdun Foundation suddenly listed her brother's school among its recipients, earning Ethan a scholarship for the next year. And when the bakery's oven broke, a new one was delivered with a note. For the hands that create sweetness, not struggle. A friend. Clara never guessed who it was. But every time something small went right, she'd look up and whisper, "Thank you," to a universe that finally seemed to remember her. A chance meeting. A week later, Clara delivered cupcakes to a business luncheon at one of the city's luxury hotels. As she balanced trays in her arms, a familiar voice stopped her. "Careful there. The floor's slippery." Her breath caught. It was him. Elias stood there, crisp suit, steady gaze, but his tone was softer than she remembered. "Mr. Verdon," she said, flustered. I didn't know this was your event." He smiled slightly. "Neither did I, apparently." She chuckled nervously, then grew serious. "You've been ordering a low."
A day in her world.
Later that week, Elias did something unthinkable for a CEO. He showed up at the bakery, unannounced. Clara nearly dropped a tray when she saw him walk in.
"You're back."
He smiled. "I thought I'd see where the magic happens." Mrs. Mendez rushed over, grinning. "Our biggest client. Try the cinnamon rolls. Clara makes them herself." Elias bought half the display. Then he insisted Clara sit with him while he tasted them. They talked again, just like before, freely, comfortably, as if they'd known each other forever. Only this time, she laughed more. And every time she did, Elias's chest felt a little less heavy. When he left, she pressed a small paper bag into his hand. "For you," she said. "No charge." He opened it later in his car. Inside was a single cupcake with a note. "For reminding me that not all strangers are unkind." He read it twice, and smiled like a man who hadn't smiled in years.
The breaking point.
But even kindness can't fix everything. One night, Clara came home to find her brother, Ethan, feverish and coughing. The doctor's visit, the medicines, they were too expensive. Her savings were gone. She tried calling the hospital's charity line, but they were full. Tears streamed down her face as she held her brother's small hand, whispering, "Please get better." At that exact hour across town, Elias sat in a board meeting, distracted and restless. He couldn't focus. Something in him felt off, an ache he couldn't explain. He left abruptly, startling his colleagues.
"Sir.
Lena called out as he walked past.
Are you all right?"
"Just follow up on the Hale family's insurance file," he said quietly. "Make sure everything's covered." Within hours, the hospital called Clara. "Miss Hale? Your brother's treatment has been approved under a private health grant. Bring him in tonight." She cried right there on the phone, relief flooding her body. Who sponsored it?" "We're not authorized to say, ma'am. It was listed as confidenti."
The rain poured outside the cafe window, streaking the glass like tears the sky couldn't hold anymore.
Ivy sat by the same table where her story had begun, now with a faint smile replacing the uncertainty that once lived in her eyes. A month had passed since that strange, fateful night, the night she'd mistakenly sat down at the wrong table and met Elias, the man who had quietly changed the course of her life. But she still didn't know how deeply he'd helped her. The reveal. That morning, Ivy had woken to a letter slipped under her apartment door. Elegant handwriting. A seal embossed with a logo she recognized from the city skyline, Elias Corporation. Her breath hitched. She opened it, and as her eyes scanned the first few lines, her world froze. "Dear Ivy, you once sat across from me by accident and spoke about stars, kindness, and forgotten dreams. You reminded me what it means to feel human again. So when I learned of your struggles, I couldn't stand still. The bakery, the rent, your art, all of it deserves a chance. Consider this not charity, but gratitude." Her trembling hands clutched the letter. He knew. He knew about her bakery bills, the eviction notices, the late rent. And he had fixed it all, quietly, anonymously. The cafe lease had been renewed under her name. Her unpaid debt wiped clean. Even her small art corner, where she painted fragile glimpses of hope, had received a sponsorship she didn't apply for.
Elias.
Her heart thudded painfully. She had spent weeks missing him, not because of the money or help, but because she had finally felt seen. And now this quiet act of love wrapped in anonymity, was the final piece of the puzzle. The return. The next morning, she went to find him. The city towered cold and metallic, its mirrored surfaces glinting under the gray sky. She felt small walking into the vast marble lobby of Elias Corporation, like a single note echoing in a cathedral. "Miss Ivy?" the receptionist asked, startled. "Mr. Elias has been expecting you." Her heart skipped. Expecting me? The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors slid open, she stepped into an office filled with light and silence. There he was, standing by the window, looking out at the city he had built yet never seemed to belong to. His tailored suit couldn't hide the loneliness in his stance. He turned, a soft smile breaking through his usual stoic mask. "Ivy," he said quietly.
You found me.
She held up the letter with shaking fingers. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do all this for me?" Elias took a slow breath. "Because you reminded me that kindness isn't weakness. Because the night you sat at my table by mistake, you gave me something I couldn't buy with all the wealth in the world, warmth." Her eyes filled. "You didn't have to fix my life." "I didn't," he replied. "I just returned what you unknowingly gave me."
You savais de me, Ivy.
"You reminded me what it's like to care.
Silence.
The kind that holds tears in its wings."
Transformation.
The weeks that followed didn't feel like a fairy tale, they felt real. Elias began visiting Ivy's little bakery after work. At first, as a customer. Then as something more. He would roll up his sleeves, help her frost cupcakes, burn a few muffins, and laugh, a sound that had been missing from his life for years. The cold CEO who once spoke in boardroom commands now laughed at flower fights and spilled cocoa. And Ivy, the girl who used to walk through life with borrowed courage, found herself standing taller, her heart braver. She didn't need saving anymore. She was building, living, healing.
The turning point.
One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ivy found Elias sitting alone.
Outside the bakery, staring at the fading light.
She sat beside him, brushing flour off her apron. "You know," she said softly, "you never told me about that night."
The one before he met you.
Elias's eyes dimmed. "It was supposed to be a blind date. My assistant set it up to help me reconnect with life," he said with a half smile. "But she never came. I almost left, until you walked in." "So it really was fate," Ivy whispered. He turned to her. Or maybe grace. Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. Full circle. Months later, the city awoke to headlines that stunned everyone. Elias Corporation partners with Ivy's Heart Bakery to launch the Kindness Project, providing meals and jobs for underprivileged families. The press called it corporate social responsibility. But to them, it was something much deeper.
Every cupcake, every loaf of bread carry a message backed into it. You mate.
It was Ivy's idea. Elias simply funded the dream. Their bakery became more than a business. It was a heartbeat. A place where lost people found hope, where stories like theirs began again. Final scene. A year later, a small girl entered the bakery clutching a crumpled coin. "Can I buy something for my mom?" she asked shyly.
Ivy bent down, eyes warm.
"Of course, sweetheart. But here, take 2. One for her, one for you." As the girl left, Elias stepped behind Ivy, sliding an arm gently around her waist. "You still give away more than you sell," he teased. She smiled. "Kindness multiplies when it's shared, remember?" He nodded, eyes soft. "You taught me that." They looked out through the bakery window, the same rain falling, but now it felt different. Not cold. Not lonely. Just alive.
Hook for audience. CTA, faceless Chanel ending.
Sometimes, the people who walk into our lives by mistake are the ones meant to stay forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Because 1.